A Study in Scarlet. Chapter 3. The Lauriston Garden Mystery. The revelation of Holmes's reasoning behind identifying the retired sergeant of Marines not only startled me, but also significantly increased my admiration for his analytical abilities. Despite my lingering doubts about the possibility of a staged scenario to impress me, Holmes's focus shifted quickly to the note delivered by the commissionaire, hinting at a new mystery to engage his mind. Holmes's dismissal of my question about his deduction with a brief explanation highlighted his impatience for what he considered trivialities, underscoring his devotion to more complex puzzles. His analogy comparing the human brain to an attic carefully stocked with useful tools of thought was a moment of insight into his philosophy of knowledge. The letter Holmes received from Tobias Gregson, one of the more competent detectives at Scotland Yard, introduced a peculiar case involving a deceased gentleman found in an empty house under mysterious circumstances. Gregson's acknowledgement of Holmes's superior deductive skills, despite official recognition, underscored the unique respect and rivalry within their professional relationship. Holmes's initial hesitance, attributed to his self-professed laziness, quickly turned into enthusiasm for the challenge presented by the case. His decision to proceed, motivated by intellectual curiosity rather than credit or official acknowledgement, highlighted his intrinsic passion for solving puzzles. This shift also marked a transition from our routine existence at Baker Street to engaging with the darker, more complex world outside, promising an adventure that would test both Holmes's abilities and my own understanding of his methods. Mystery in a hansom cab, Holmes's light-hearted banter about violins contrasted sharply with the gravity of our mission and my own somber reflections. His caution against theorizing without sufficient data served as a valuable lesson in his approach to detective work, emphasizing the importance of observation and evidence over premature conclusions. The foggy morning and the grim task ahead did little to dampen Holmes's spirits. As we neared our destination, his focus sharpened, preparing to apply his remarkable skills to untangle the intricacies of the case laid out in Gregson's letter. This introduction to Holmes's world of detection promised not just an insight into his professional life, but also a deeper understanding of the man behind the detective, his methods, and his relentless pursuit of truth amidst the shadows of human nature and criminal intent. As we approached number 3, Lauriston Gardens, the scene before us was bleak and foreboding. The house, one of the vacant ones in the row, had a desolate appearance, its windows staring emptily out onto the street, marked by "To Let" signs that seemed almost like a plea for occupancy. The garden path, muddied by rain, led us to a scene already gathered with curious onlookers and a police constable who seemed to guard the mystery within from the prying eyes of the public. I had anticipated Sherlock Holmes would dive into the heart of the mystery with haste, yet his approach was contrary to every expectation. He sauntered with a seeming disinterest, examining the surroundings with a casual eye that belied the intensity of his observation. Holmes's stops, his quiet exclamation of satisfaction, all spoke to his inner workings that remained a mystery to me as much as the case at hand. Upon entering the house, we were greeted by Gregson, a detective with an evident respect for Holmes's capabilities, yet the state of the pathway into the house drew Holmes's immediate censure for its disturbance. The interior scene we were led to was grim, a room devoid of warmth and life, save for the stark, lifeless body that lay at its center. The victim's appearance spoke volumes: his age, his physical attributes, and the inexplicable nature of his death in such a stark, unfurnished room. The disarray of the room, the solitary, grimy window allowing only the merest light to filter through, and the overall neglect that seemed to permeate the space only added to the atmosphere of desolation and mystery. Holmes's keen observation immediately began to dissect the scene, his mind undoubtedly cataloging every detail, every discrepancy that could lead to an unraveling of the event that had transpired here. Gregson's assurance that they had done all they could seemed almost a challenge to Holmes, a gauntlet thrown down not in defiance but in acknowledgement of Holmes's superior deductive skills. As Holmes entered the room, the stark reality of the task before us was palpable. The presence of death casts a profound silence, a reverence that commands attention and respect. The details of the room, the mildewed wallpaper peeling away, the dusty expanse that seemed untouched by time, all faded into the background as the figure on the floor demanded our focus. The body, that of a man in his prime, lay as the centerpiece of this macabre tableau, his life story cut short under mysterious circumstances. As Holmes surveyed the scene, his demeanor one of focused contemplation, I could only wonder at the thoughts and deductions forming in his extraordinary mind. This was the beginning of a puzzle that only Sherlock Holmes could hope to solve, and I, as ever, was a student to his method, eager to see the master at work. The sight of the man lying there was deeply shocking. He was wearing a formal coat and vest with light pants, and his clothes looked very clean and proper. Next to him on the floor was a neat top hat. His hands were tightly closed, and his body looked like he had struggled a lot before he died. His face had a look of horror and maybe anger, which made him look very scary. It was a sight I will never forget. Lestrade, who was thin and looked sharp, was already there. He seemed to think this case was very unusual and harder than any he had seen before. "There's no hint on how he died?" Gregson asked. "Not at all," Lestrade joined in. Holmes carefully looked over the body and the blood around it. "Are you sure the man wasn't hurt?" he asked, because it seemed odd there was blood but no wound on him. Both detectives were sure of it. "So, the blood must belong to someone else, maybe the person who did this, if it was indeed murder," Holmes suggested. He compared the scene to a past case, but Gregson hadn't heard of it. Holmes told him he should read about it since nothing in crime was truly new. Holmes checked the body very quickly and thoroughly, even smelling the man's mouth and looking at his shoes. He asked if the body had been moved and was told only a little for the examination. After finishing his look-over, Holmes said the body could be taken away. They wouldn't learn anything more here. As the body was lifted, a ring fell and rolled on the floor. Lestrade picked it up, surprised, saying a woman must have been involved because it looked like a wedding ring. "This makes things more complicated," Gregson said, worried about how complex the case was getting. "Are you sure it doesn't make things simpler?" Holmes wondered. He asked what was found with the man. Gregson showed a collection of items including a gold watch, a chain, a Masonic ring, a pin with rubies, a leather card case with the man's name, Enoch J. Drebber from Cleveland, some money, a book with another man's name, Joseph Stangerson, and 2 letters, one for each man, about a trip back to New York. Gregson had already been looking for this Stangerson, sending out ads and checking with the American Exchange, but hadn't found anything yet. They had also sent a message to Cleveland for information. Holmes asked how they had worded their questions, concerned they might not have asked for specific enough details to really help find out what happened. As Holmes and I stood there, taking in the scene at number 3, Lauriston Gardens, the house seemed shrouded in mystery. After Lestrade announced his discovery, he beckoned us excitedly. "Come here," Lestrade urged, leading us back into the room. He struck a match and illuminated a section of the wall. "Look at that," he exclaimed, pointing to a word written in blood. "Rache." "What do you think of that?" Lestrade asked proudly, convinced he had uncovered a crucial clue. The word, written in such a grim context, suggested a narrative far beyond a simple message. Gregson, ever skeptical, voiced his doubt, prompting Holmes to inspect the scene more closely. Holmes, with a keen eye, began his examination of the room, moving with purpose and precision. He questioned the detectives about the body's condition and the blood's placement, introducing the possibility of a second individual's involvement. As Holmes delved deeper, his methodical approach unraveled layers of the mystery, drawing attention to the smallest details that others might overlook. His examination was thorough, from the dead man's personal effects to the cryptic message on the wall. "Have you considered the significance of this word, Rache?" Holmes finally asked, breaking his concentrated silence. The detectives looked on, puzzled by Holmes's line of inquiry. "It's German for revenge," Holmes revealed, dismissing the assumption that it referred to a woman named Rachel. This revelation shifted the direction of their investigation, underscoring Holmes's profound understanding of the case's nuances. As we prepared to leave, Holmes shared his deductions about the perpetrator, offering a detailed profile based on his observations. The detectives, Gregson and Lestrade, exchanged incredulous looks, unable to grasp the depth of Holmes's analysis. "If this was murder, how do you suppose it was done?" Gregson challenged. "Poison," Holmes stated simply, leaving the room with an air of confidence that bordered on arrogance. Outside, Holmes reiterated his offer to assist with the investigation, his parting words leaving a lasting impression on the detectives and me. His assertion that the murder was intricately planned and executed by a man of specific characteristics underscored his unique ability to see beyond the obvious, to connect seemingly unrelated dots into a coherent picture. As Holmes and I left Lauriston Gardens, the mystery of what happened in that dimly lit room hung heavily in the air. Holmes's insights into the case, drawn from his meticulous examination and intuitive understanding of human nature, promised a pursuit of justice as complex and challenging as the detective himself.
English Storyteller JB, like and subscribe.